Here we are in Washington, D.C., amidst another malfunction. The whole world is looking at what's happening in the House and the historic ouster of a speaker. Is American democracy in trouble?
Yes, absolutely it's in trouble. It was in trouble before this latest incident. This just makes it abundantly clear to anybody paying attention that we have one political party that unfortunately is in absolute hostage situation with its most extreme members. And Kevin McCarthy, who, I have no, relationship with of any kind, but when he actually did the right thing for the country and kept us from going into a government shutdown, he was punished. And he was punished because he worked with Democrats. He worked for the good of the country. He was not continuing to be captive to the far-right extremists. So they toppled him. It was a very small number as you look at the vote, but now we're, reaping the consequences of their misbehavior.
So should the Democrats have saved him, so to speak? Should they have voted to keep him in?
That was a very tough call for the Democratic caucus, but the problem was for them, as I understand it, he was totally untrustworthy by any measure. He immediately after they did help him keep the government open, as you know, began to blame them for all kinds of, extraneous matters. And at some point, a leader who has lost all credibility in dealing with the opposition, where you want to have an open line of communication, you want to be able to trust his word, is going to, ask for their help and not get it.
It's said that the main contenders for his position are Jim Jordan, who you know very well from Benghazi.
Oh, I don't know him well. I watched him and stared at him for 11 hours while he made stuff up about me. So I don't know him, but I've seen him in action.
So what will it mean if he gets the speakership?
Well, I mean, he is one of the principal ringleaders of the circus that's been created in the Republican Party for the last several years. I have no inside knowledge about what the Republicans will do, who they will end up voting for. But when do they put the country first? They do not represent a majority of even the Republican Party. When you look at the extremists in the House, they certainly don't represent a majority of the country. And, somebody has to stand up and say enough. We can have disagreements. I'm all for that. I was in the Senate for 8 years. I worked with a lot of Republicans and, opposed them when I didn't agree. But at some point, there needs to be a backlash against the control that this small group of extremists have. And I don't know who will lead that, but let's hope whoever becomes the new speaker will.
So the firebrands, as you've said, the 8 or however many they are, the minority of the Republicans who've ousted their speaker, have done so also loudly decrying America's support for Ukraine and saying that, no, we care about America first, not about Ukraine. It's not in our best interest. Do you think that's going to continue? President Biden is planning a major speech in order to shore up what his administration is doing for the defense of democracy in Ukraine. What is your feeling about this and your advice?
Well, I believe that the majority of the Congress on both sides of the aisle still support giving aid to Ukraine, helping Ukraine defend itself, understand that Ukraine's fight is our fight, understand that a democracy struggling against an autocracy that is conducting a barbaric invasion and committing crimes against humanity and genocide has to be defeated. So I think a majority of the Congress, just like still a majority of the public, is in favor of helping Ukraine. The challenge will be if whoever is elected speaker somehow controls the floor so you can't get a vote. So we have a majority, just like we had a majority to keep the government open until, finally McCarthy allowed there to be a vote with Democrats and a big number of Republicans. So there'll have to be an enormous amount of pressure and maneuvering to get that vote, because the Senate will vote to continue to fund Ukraine. The Pentagon will be asking to continue to fund Ukraine. They understand the stakes. So the struggle will be in the House, and we'll all have to do everything we can to force a vote, because if we get a vote, Ukraine will be given the aid it needs.
So when you look at how to go forward for the country, as you say, is there any area of coalition building that could happen? There are pragmatic Republicans, as you say. Could there be a whole new way of trying to, get legislation going and cross-party governance going by Democrats and certain Republicans forming a coalition?
Well, you saw the number of Republicans who voted along with Democrats to keep the government open. So there's clearly a common sense, sane part of the Republican caucus in the House. But I think they are intimidated. They oftentimes, say and do things which they know better than to say or do. And it will require us defeating those most extreme measures and the people who promote them in order to try to get to some common ground where people can, again, work together. That's the way it used to be. I mean, we had very strong partisans in both parties in the past, and we had very bitter battles over all kinds of things, gun control and climate change and the economy and taxes. But there wasn't this little tail of extremism wagging the dog of the Republican Party as it is today. And sadly, so many of those extremists, those MAGA extremists, take their marching orders from Donald Trump, who has no credibility left by any measure. He's only in it for himself. He's now defending himself in civil actions and criminal actions. And when do they break with him? Because at some point, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members, but something needs to happen.
And how do you do that? Because you said you have to defeat them by defeating their leader. Their leader
Right.
is Donald Trump. Even you have said that you expect him to be the Republican nominee. How does this change at all?
At this point, I think, sadly, he will still likely be the nominee, and we have to defeat him. And we have to defeat those who are the election deniers, as we did in 2020 and 2022. And we have to, just be smarter about how we are trying to empower the right people inside the Republican Party. Nancy Pelosi had a majority of 5 votes when she was Speaker. Kevin McCarthy had a majority of 5 votes. Nancy Pelosi passed consequential legislation. And she clearly had members within her caucus who, ranged across a spectrum of political beliefs and ideology. And she kept everybody together. And she kept everybody focused on the future. He couldn't do that. And so he paid a price, but more importantly, the country paid a price.
And so when you see another matchup between potentially Trump and President Biden, what goes through your mind? And particularly, how do you process that this person who defeated you back in 2016 is still at it, given all that you've said? Civil fraud, sexual transgressions according to the courts. How is this still happening?
It's the classic tale of an authoritarian populist who really has a grip on the emotional, psychological needs and desires of a portion of the population. And the base of the Republican Party, for whatever combination of reasons, and it is emotional and psychological, sees in him someone who speaks for them. And they are determined that they will continue to vote for him, attend his rallies, wear his merchandise, because for whatever reason, he and his very negative, nasty form of politics resonates with them. Maybe they don't like migrants. Maybe they don't like gay people or black people or the woman who got the promotion at work they didn't get. Whatever the reason, Make America Great Again was a bid for nostalgia, to return to a place where, people could be in charge of their lives, feel empowered, say what they want, insult whoever came in their way. And that was really attractive to a significant portion of the Republican base. So it is like a cult. And somebody has to break the, break that momentum. And that's why I believe Joe Biden will defeat him. And hopefully then that will be the end, and the fever will break, and then Republicans can try to get back to, fighting about issues among themselves and electing people who are at least, responsible and accountable.
Are you concerned that a third-party candidate on the Democratic side could thwart Joe Biden's chances?
I am always concerned about a third party. That's what happened to me, as we all can recall, and helped by a lot of other forces, and that could happen again this time. So, of course, I worry about anyone who might take votes away from President Biden, because, I'm in the camp, Christiane, that says, why do you actually hire a politician? What is it you want? And what I want is somebody who can get the job done. And Biden has done an amazing job by any measure. People have talked about infrastructure forever. He passed the bill. People have talked about losing advanced manufacturing to China. He passed the bill. People have talked about getting clean energy actually to produce even more and more jobs. He passed the bill. Negotiating for drug prices. All of these things, which many of us have tried to get done in, the Senate and beyond, he's gotten done. And it's going to change Americans' lives for the better, and it's going to enhance and grow our economy. And when people say, well, I don't know, pay attention, please. Pay attention to what he's gotten accomplished. But if you don't want to be for him on the merits the way I am, be for him because the alternative could end our democracy. And I don't say that lightly.